Even in the vacuum of space, there are places far more hostile than others. In this video, we'll travel to some of the most extreme worlds that the universe has to offer. From places with oceans of molten metal to frozen hells, where even time itself slows down. And if you stick around to the end, we'll show you what it would take for a planet to be the most hostile world of all. First though, let's look at some contenders. Welcome to our channel. Watch all the way to the end to find out what the most hostile world in the universe would need to be like. Was that too easy? Come on, you know there had to be something more, right? So how about this one? Once upon a time, scientists thought that beneath the freezing cold of Uranus, there was a raging ocean of molten metal, perfect for making some serious metal music. Now, while it turns out that Uranus isn't quite so hospitable after all, there are other worlds with oceans of liquid metal. In 2013, researchers found evidence of a sea of liquid iron around a very hot Jupiter-sized exoplanet, WASP 76b. Its surface temperature is a mind-bending 1100 degrees Celsius. If you happen to fall into its atmosphere, you wouldn't even have a chance to break your fall. At that temperature, any spacecraft or human would simply vaporize upon entry. WASP 76b's atmosphere is so thick that it creates a crushing pressure more than 20 times that of Earth's. You might think that this kind of environment couldn't get any worse, but it does get worse. There are storms on WASP 76b that reach speeds of up to 18,000 kilometers per hour. These whirlwinds of awfulness are caused by the winds of the scorching star it orbits, which whip around the planet at incredible speeds. And because this gas giant doesn't have a solid surface, these storms can rage for thousands of years. Just make sure you steer clear of this planet, unless you want to spend the rest of eternity spinning around in a roiling mass of superheated metal. It may seem obvious, but you would think that being too cold would be much less dangerous than being too hot. After all, you could always just put on a warm coat, right? Well, not if you were on WASP 39b. This very far-out gas giant is so frigid that even lead, which has a melting point of minus 27 degrees Celsius, would be a solid s. That's because WASP 39b is so cold that time itself seems to slow down. You see, as a planet gets colder, time slows down on it, relative to a hotter planet. This is because time is relative and depends on the observer's frame of reference. Since atoms move slower as they get colder, they vibrate less and their clocks tick slower, meaning time actually passes more slowly on WASP 39b than it does on Earth. Now, this may not sound like much of a difference, but over billions of years, it adds up. Scientists say that WASP 39b is actually 8.4 years younger than Earth. So if you want to stay young and live forever, maybe you should move to this distant, frigid planet. Or better yet, don't, because while it's true that time passes more slowly there, so does everything else. Literally nothing happens on WASP 39b. It's completely lifeless and completely frozen. So if you're looking for a new place to call home, we'd recommend steering clear of this particular ice cube. Sometimes the most hostile worlds aren't too hot and they aren't too cold. They're just really, really dry. Take Kepler for 4b, for example. This rocky planet is almost twice the size of Earth, and it orbits a small star 1,200 light-years away. God, it's so dry that if you wanted to survive there, you'd have to bring your own water. Now, you might be thinking, well, how hard can it be to find water on a planet? Turns out that if you're on the wrong planet, it can be pretty hard. Kepler 4b has no lakes, rivers, oceans, or even clouds. Its sky is perpetually gray, because it's covered in a thick haze that blocks out its dim sun. What little rain does fall on the planet evaporates almost instantly upon hitting the ground. And any water that does manage to pool quickly disappears into the cracks of the planet's surface. That's because the ground on Kepler 4b is made of a type of rock called perovskite, which is highly absorbent. So if you wanted to build a house on this planet, you'd have to bring a whole lot of bricks. Fortunately, it's unlikely that anything large enough to support human life could ever evolve on such a dry planet. It's because the lack of water vapor in the atmosphere prevents the formation of clouds, which in turn means that there's no rain. And without rain, it's difficult for life as we know it to get started. So if you're planning on colonizing Kepler 4b, you'll have to bring your own people. Good luck with that. Here's another really dry place, except this one isn't a planet, it's an asteroid. Asteroid 243 IDA is so dry that it doesn't even have a core. In fact, it's just a giant space rock with a bunch of loose gravel scattered on top. But despite its small size, 243 IDA is surprisingly hostile. That's because it has almost no gravity. It's just 0.17 Gs. So if you tried to walk on it, you'd feel like you were on the moon. But unlike the moon, 243 Ida has no atmosphere, which means that if you tried to breathe on it, you'd suffocate. To make things even worse, it's incredibly dark. Even during the brief periods when it's not being bombarded by meteorites, it's perpetually shrouded in darkness. That's because it orbits the sun between Jupiter and Neptune, where there's almost no sunlight. So if you wanted to survive on this asteroid, you'd need to bring a lot of light bulbs. Good luck finding an electrician, though. All the good ones left the solar system millions of years ago. So now you're probably wondering, what would it take for a planet to be the most hostile place in the universe? Well, here are a few ideas. First, it would need to be incredibly hot, like WASP 76b, with temperatures hot enough to melt lead. It would also need to be incredibly cold, like WASP 39b. With time passing hundreds or thousands of times slower than it does on Earth, it would need to be completely dry, like Kepler 440b, with no water or atmosphere. And it would need to be incredibly dark, like 243 Ida, with almost no sunlight. But those are just the physical conditions. A truly hostile world would also need to be dangerous in other ways. It would need to have no breathable air, no clean water, no food, no shelter, and no friends. It would be a place where you couldn't walk, talk, think, or feel anything at all. A place where you would cease to exist. But perhaps most importantly, a hostile world would need to be utterly hopeless. A place where there was no possibility of escape, no chance of rescue, no hope of anything good ever happening again. Because ultimately, it's not the heat, the cold, the darkness, or the dryness that makes a place hostile. It's the feeling of utter despair that pervades every atom of its being. So if you're ever unlucky enough to stumble upon such a place, remember this: the most hostile world in the universe is the one that you create in your own mind. Did you learn nothing? Do you feel like you wasted 3 minutes of your life? Then try our specially crafted course, which will make you feel like a genius. With Brilliant, you can learn things that you wouldn't believe you can, like how computers work, or the math behind neural networks. It's insanely fun and super easy, with new lessons added each month. And if you sign up right now, you can save 20% off your annual premium subscription. Thanks for watching.